Have you ever wondered what your wife does at night when you sleep? One of our cheating stories will leave you shocked. This wife decided to escape the routine of her life and leave her husband for a while to try something new and exciting. What happened next? Find out in this fascinating video. Sveta and Anatoly met when they were both in their final year at the institute. That year was difficult, but they managed to build a strong and trusting relationship. After graduation, they got married and began to live together and just recently celebrated 7 years of marriage. Tolya's career took off quite quickly, which could not be said about Sveta. She was unlucky with her superiors and with the company. As time went by, her own fervor moved up the career ladder at gas. When Tolya was already in a managerial position, his wife was in the ranks of ordinary employees and received not so much. So the husband took on the role of the family's primary breadwinner. Even last summer, in the midst of vacation, Sveta and Tolya were going to go to the sea. The option not to go there was not. The wife strongly persuaded her husband to go, because at that time she was very tired at work due to the increased workload. And in general, they have not been going anywhere for a long time. The couple had been putting money aside for a vacation since the beginning of the year, and all their dreams were only about a long-awaited vacation. But life gave them an unpleasant surprise. When they were about to take a trip, their prices skyrocketed, and so that the accumulated funds were not enough. Of course, it would be possible to take a loan, but the couple agreed at the beginning of the relationship that they would not go into debt under any circumstances. All hope was for the next vacation. Tolya began to take on extra work so that he could quickly save the necessary amount, buy a trip in advance, and do his wife a favor. Everything turned out as Anatoly had planned. He managed to snatch the cherished tickets, his wife was happy, and they finally went to rest. They liked the hotel, the staff was friendly, and it was easy to relax on the first day. The couple spent a couple of days exploring the area, looking around, went to the beach. One evening, they started talking about that it would be good to go on an excursion. "Now I will find out everything," Light said and left the room. The woman went down to the first floor to the reception to inquire about excursions for guests. She had seen some brochures at the reception, but did not immediately think to take them. While she was looking at the bright pictures and occasionally asked the receptionist questions, a man she did not know approached the desk. "I recommend this boat trip." A very pleasant low voice sounded, and the Light immediately raised her eyes, spellbound on its owner. "Have you been?" the woman asked. "Tell me." She did not expect herself to be so interested, and not at all in the walk, but rather in this particular interlocutor. At this point, the receptionist received a phone call. He apologized and went on an emergency call. The two got into a conversation. The man was Stanislav. He had been here for about a week and had visited everything there was to see. "But with such a pretty companion, I could do the same thing again." He smiled. Svetlana was unexpectedly pleased by this flirtation on the part of such an attractive man, and she decided not to say anything about her husband. After talking for a couple more minutes and taking a brochure, the woman apologized to her new acquaintance and said that she had to go. When she went up to her room, her husband asked where she had stayed so long. The wife lied, saying she had been waiting a long time for the receptionist. Just not a word, she didn't say a word. A couple of days later, late at night, the couple took a walk by the sea. It was already quite cool, and Sveta was walking, wrapped in a blouse. "Well, remember your youth," cheerfully said he and began to undress. "What are you up to?" Sveta disapprovingly looked at us already. "Let's swim." "Do you remember how our first summer we swam under the moon?" said her husband, already standing knee-deep in water, and giving his hand to his wife, as if inviting her to follow him. Sveta shivered with cold and said that it is better to stay on the shore. "You'll get sick," she murmured to her husband, but he was already dissecting the water surface at full speed. While he was swimming and called in every way to join her, she only grinned strained, while she herself was mentally far away. She kept thinking of Stanislav, and the way he had looked at her the first time she had met him. Several times at breakfast, she saw him again. He was sitting alone at the table, and there was no disappointment on his face at the sight of the saint in her husband's company. He was still smiling and did not take his eyes off her. The very next morning, Svetlana's words came true. Her husband woke up in pain. He decided that it was better for him to rest in his room for a couple of days, and he actively drove his wife out of the room, so she too would not get infected. Go on a boat trip. There's nothing to breathe my Vasily here," the husband said, and started coughing. On the one hand, she felt sorry for her husband, because he would be sick for a few days of well-deserved rest. But on the other hand, Sveta saw a good opportunity to continue getting to know the neighbor she was interested in. As she went down to the first floor with these thoughts, the woman came face to face with Stanislav, as if he was already waiting for her here. After the greeting, there was a short pause. Stas seemed to be waiting for Sveta's further actions. The woman looked up at him. "You know, let's go somewhere. I had a lot of free time now," she said, and he smiled. The man rented a car and drove Svetlana around the beautiful places all day. They dined at an expensive restaurant, where her companion did not hesitate to hold her hand while they waited for their meal. At that moment, though Sveta yanked her embarrassed hand away, this game was beginning to please her. Toward evening, as the beautiful setting sun illuminated the sea and the trees near the house, the man stopped the car near the cliff, where there was a wonderful view. They got out, stood by the hood, and admired the sunset. There was no one nearby. Imperceptibly, the man ran his hand around Svetlana's waist and turned his companion toward him, pulling her ever so slightly closer. "I've dreamed of this moment since the first day I saw you," he said, and smiled softly. "Interesting," Svetlana stretched out, just to fill the pause. She herself was already aware that the man wanted to kiss her. It frightened her, but at the same time, she couldn't wait to fall into Stanislav's arms herself. She was so drawn to him. He leaned toward her slowly, his eyes greedily searching her lips. She had plenty of time to push the man away, but she didn't. Instead, Svetlana herself reached for him like a magnet. They kissed passionately, and in a moment, the man's hands were undressing her. By this point, Sveta no longer resisted what was happening even mentally. That night, she returned to her husband's room as if nothing had happened. "How was the tour?" Anatol asked her and smiled. "I liked it well," the wife replied, remembering how she actually spent her time. "I feel better already. The pills helped, so we will be together on our next trips," proclaimed the husband, holding his beloved. It is impossible to say that Sveta was happy about this news. In her mind, she had already made plans for how she and Stanislav again slip away from everyone and spend time, just the two of them. Her newfound lover was in no hurry to break their bond either, so they agreed that Sveta would come to him at night when her husband was already asleep. Tolya always slept very soundly, so she was not afraid to wake him up with any rustling. They tried to do everything unnoticed by others, but one night someone did see them. On her next midnight escape, Sveta met another neighbor in the hallway, who saw her cautiously knocking on the room and Stanislav opening the door for her. The neighbor politely said hello, but Stas only sharply slammed the door. The unexpected witness's name was Georgi. He had recently arrived here and hadn't had time to meet anyone yet. He assumed that the couple he had seen at night came here to rest together, and his thoughts were only confirmed the next day. From the balcony of his room, he saw Sveta and Stas standing by the pool and talking, trying to take cover behind a large beach umbrella. Before they kissed, the two looked around for some reason, as if hiding from someone's prying eyes, and then both went their separate ways on their own business. Georgie's gaze fell on the chaise lounge next to where the couple were standing. He saw the phone left on it. It was already too late to call the owners, since everyone had gone away. So the man decided to go down to the pool himself and return the thing left behind. He could not remember the number of the room where the couple were staying. He was too tired that night and didn't think he needed to pay attention to the signs. He didn't know the names either, but he got lucky with the other one. The woman had put her picture on the screensaver on her phone, so describing her was a problem. He asked the receptionist for her room number and explained the situation. Going up to the right door, Georgie knocked. The door was opened for some reason, not by the man he had seen with Svetlana. The neighbor was even a little taken aback, because he thought she was resting with someone else. By the confused face of the woman herself, who appeared next to her real spouse, it was clear that she, too, did not expect to see the midnight witness of her infidelity. When she saw the phone in the hands of an unexpected guest, she somehow joked absurdly about how absent-minded she was, thanked for the phone, and hurried to close the door. Georgie spent a long time trying to understand what had just happened. At night, and for some time during the day, she spends time with one, and trying to be inconspicuous, she lives with another. It seems that he had just uncovered another cheater. Another one, because he himself had recently broken up with a woman with whom he had been together for several years. And this breakup was very unpleasant, in particular, because of the fact that Georgie had found out that she had been dating others until the last moment. He didn't even expect that the whole situation of his hotel roommates, whom he would most likely never see again in his life, would so take over his thoughts. In the end, he was so tired of brooding on these endless musings that he decided to talk to Anatoly himself. Unbeknownst to the world, he caught him at a communal breakfast and told him everything he knew and saw. Of course, Tolya did not believe him immediately. Then George gave him one piece of advice: to set himself an alarm clock in the middle of the night and check if his spouse is around, since she considers it normal to go out at night to someone else. I hope you understand what's really going on. Good luck to you. With those words, Georgie left for his table. Now it was time for my husband to act. He was, of course, very uncomfortable even allowing the idea that the light might not be faithful to him. But why would some neighbor suddenly say such a thing about her? So there really was a reason for it. He did as Georgie had advised him, set the alarm clock for a time when he should have been sound asleep by now. But there was no sleep that night. Sveta kept asking him if he was going to go to bed because it was late. These endless questions added oil to the fire. She was nervous, which meant she could really have plans for the night. Then Anatoly lay down and pretended to be asleep already. After a while, he heard Sveta pack up and leave the room. That night, the whole hotel must have been up in arms over the scandal that broke out on the second floor. Anatoly followed Sveta, found out exactly who she was going to at night, and gave them a truly unforgettable evening, after which the lover wore sunglasses for a long time, even indoors. The morning of their vacation was forced to come to an end. Sveta had no chance to beg forgiveness for this behavior, so she just watched in silence as her whole life crumbled. Anatoly filed for divorce as soon as they were already in town. Unfaithful to his wife, he only allowed her to get her things from the apartment and leave as quickly as possible. The woman still tried for a long time to get in touch with her lover, but he left her message unanswered. Normally he had a family of his own, which he did not want to ruin because of some holiday romance. Sveta was less fortunate in this situation. She was now divorced. She urgently needed to find a new apartment and somehow live on her modest salary. It could not be otherwise, because you have to pay for everything in life. He seemed like the perfect husband, but it turned out that his personal life is constant cheating and scandalous stories. We present to you amazing stories of adultery, which will show that our life is full of surprises and surprises. Marina and Alexander had been married for 4 years. Sasha proposed to his girlfriend in a hurry. They had been dating for a little over a year. She was 23, very young and temperamental, and one day in the heat of an argument she said she would leave him. Alexander was older than she was. Subconsciously, he understood that these words were spoken on emotion, but still, the fear of losing his beloved overpowered him, and he proposed to her. In the future, he did not regret anything. He continued to love Marina as much as before. So when she got tired of her past work and decided to quit, her husband only supported her. She quit, and that's good. You were always complaining that you didn't like it there. You'll find something better soon. Encouragingly said her husband. I'm not looking for something right now, she replied. I want to rest and think about where I should go next in general. The next 6 months, Marina mostly sat at home or went out with friends. The search for herself dragged on. The atmosphere in the house was not getting better. The last month somehow did not get along. My husband put it down to the crisis of his wife. She cooled down to everything, including her husband. She did not know what she wanted from life. I thought that it was all temporary and that everything would get better soon. You just had to be patient a little bit. But he did not want to go home after work anymore. He was mostly apathetic. In fact, his sadness was deeper. At some point, he realized that he was ready for children and already wanted a family expansion. But by the look of his wife's mood, he knew that this would not be a good idea right now. His coworker Eugene's plans fit perfectly into this mood. Alexander considered him a good friend, even though they did not see each other that often at work, but still, when you spend most of the day with a person, he becomes a friend. This same colleague started asking more and more often to cover for him in front of his superiors, to leave early. He smiled slyly and said he was arranging his personal life. Sasha sighed, but complied with the request. At least let someone have something joyful in his personal life. At first, Genia asked for a favor a couple of times a week, then every day. In the last week, my requests for backup were joined by outright impudence. Genia also asked him to do some of his work that he could not do himself. Sasha did not particularly like this idea, but in general, he was in no hurry, so he agreed. After getting another agreement from his friend, Genia went about his business more and more contentedly. One day, on a hot summer day, when Sasha was doing his last hour and a half at work, and there was practically no one in the office except him, he decided to distract himself and delete old photos from his phone. Leafing through the gallery, the man came across a joint photo with Marina when they first vacationed at the sea. His heart snapped. At that moment, they were both so happy. It seemed that the future would be as joyous as that day. He suddenly missed his wife very much. He was tired of the fact that lately they had become like strangers to each other. In the midst of these thoughts, he decided to leave early and spend time with his wife. He got out of the stuffy room and walked happily to his car. She needed to please her. He thought and first decided to go to the store. He bought beautiful flowers and a cake, which they usually took for holidays. Thinking for sure that it would make his wife happy or at least change the sour face into a pleasant smile, he went home satisfied with himself. Driving up to his usual parking space, Sasha saw that it was occupied, and the car that took this place looked very familiar. Looking at the license plate, an unpleasant chill ran down the man's back. It was Eugene's car. As far as he himself remembered, his colleague was never much in this part of town, and now he just had to, according to his own words, establish his personal life. Leaving the car at the next doorway, Alexander ran to his own. He had never flown into an apartment so quickly before. To his surprise, it was pretty quiet everywhere. He cautiously went inside and saw that the door to the bedroom was ajar. Inwardly, he was already preparing himself that when he opened that door, his life might divide into before and after. But this step had to be taken. He pushed the door open and looked ahead. Right before his eyes, his worst nightmare was coming true. He distracted his wife and his wife, who were lying on the bed, preoccupied with each other. The husband was no longer in control of his further actions. He grabbed the cunning coworker who had decided to take advantage of his friendship and hit him hard, putting all his anger into that blow. Then he fell to the floor, not expecting such a sharp attack. And when Alexander went to Marina, ready to do anything, she stretched out her arms to protect him and shouted that she would get out of here herself, if only he would not touch her. This streaming brought Sasha out of his wild state, and he tried to pull himself together and not do anything he might regret in the future. The divorce followed immediately. Sasha lamented about this. An ex-friend really wasn't lying when he talked about his personal life arrangement. With Marina, he really moved in together and then married. Alexander was mad because he was a fool to cover for his wife, while he was spinning romance with his wife behind his back and long restrained himself from the place of the former companion. Then he did tell his boss about Eugene's constant early departures, plus open his eyes to more serious violations on his part. He himself could not stand snitches, but in this situation, he believed that Genia himself deserved such treatment. After the divorce, Marina was happy with her new life, a wonderful lover by her side, who surrounded her with care and attention. A new apartment. He did not drive her to work. On the contrary, he said that a woman should not work. In the new relationship, which in addition now she did not have to hide, the woman relaxed and came out because of sadness. True, this honeymoon did not last long. Eugene's sudden dismissal changed everything. He did not expect such a development. From that, he was very confused. He began to insist that Marina look for a job. The woman coped with this task quite quickly. She thought that she needed to help her beloved here and now, so she did not look for anything complicated, and went to the first ad that came to her, where even experience was not required. But Genia himself did not hurry with the search. He thought he deserved a vacation and his work could wait. Marina did not immediately realize that her newfound husband was just getting comfortable and using her. But when she realized, she was very upset. The perfect picture began to crumble. Not really knowing the man in normal life, she rushed into a new relationship, thinking that it would be better than the previous ones, but it was wrong. While she was thinking about what to do next, the situation only worsened. It turned out that Genia also drinks. Apparently, before he was held back by a stable job and schedule, but now there was none of that, and he relaxed. Then one day, Marina came home from work and found him in the kitchen with several other drunks and a lot of bottles of alcohol. The woman did not want to live with an unemployed alcoholic, but she was also afraid of something else. What would people think if she divorced for the second time in the last year? What would they say behind her back? And then she continued to endure her unenviable fate, constantly regretting that she had traded her past life for this. Good day.